Hello and welcome. So today we start the new series of very unusual opening line, the Trompowsky Attack. So after d4 and knight f6, when white would like to avoid the theoretical battles in the Nimzo Indian or Queen's Indian defense, white could try going for bishop g5. So this line is not so popular even in today's practice. However, it has quite a lot of favor even in the grandmaster practicing. Some of grandmasters like Julian Hodgson and the former world champion, women world champion Antonetta Stefanova just played this bishop g5 line in the practicing. However, of course, the great popularity of this d4 knight f6 bishop g5 move, of course, come from the Viktor Korchnoi, who used this bishop g5 Trompowsky attack line against the Karpov in their world championship matches. And later on, even Anand used the bishop g5 move in the decisive game against the world champion Anatoly Karpov in 1998 World Championship cycle. So what I would like to tell you is that by playing bishop g5, white would like to trade this bishop on the black's knight, but at the same time just to destroy black's pawn structure. And in many situations white is trying to play very slow lines and to keep the center closed, because black got two bishops advantage in many variations. However, one of the most principal lines here for black is just trying to immediately to attack the center. So the best and the most interesting, of course, and the theory recommendation is just to move the knight to e4 and only later on to play or c5 or d5, so with attacking the white's bishop on g5. Indeed, the players who loves playing the King's Indian defense, so usually keeping the knight on f6 and trying to attack the white's pawn on d4. So by the way, the Trompowsky was a Brazilian chess player who used quite successfully this opening line even before the Second World War. However, as I explained, there is a great popularity, so this move and the greatest respect, of course, for this popularity just goes to Viktor Korchnoi. So after c5, white in many variations could immediately capture on f6. However, after g takes f6, d5 and move like queen b6 or even f5, so black reached quite playable and quite interesting counterplaying. Really to say, even I played this position with black pieces a few times and I didn't find any serious troubles after the opening. So black is trying to attack the center quite fast. So one of my games continue: queen b6, queen c1, here f5, and whatever white plays c4 or e3, so black is developing his bishop to g7, then just continue attacking white's center after e6, then after d6 and knight d7, the black's knight just simply going to f6 or to e5. So black has quite solid pawn structure in the center, and this pawn mess sometimes could just give white a headache for finding some plan in this situation, since black is having two bishops advantage and center control, so not so clear how white could fight for the serious advantage in such a situation. So much more aggressive move in this line, of course, is d4, d5. So white is not in hurry to exchange his bishop on the black's knight on f6, but would like maybe to play later on knight c3, and then to take the full control over the center after e2, e4. However, black immediately trying to attack black's pawn on b2 by playing queen b6, and this is the most interesting line which I would like you to study in the new series of lecture about the Trompowsky attack. It looks that white is just having a problem because he cannot protect the pawn on b2 by playing queen c1 because black simply captures the pawn knight takes d5. At the same time, b3 just cannot be recommended since after knight e4, so black just solves all his problem. What else? Bishop c1. Sometimes this move happen in the practicing. However, I believe that by playing e6, black is just not only solving all the opening problems, but maybe even stands slightly better. So in this position, the most principal and most aggressive continuation was found in 1974 by brilliant Armenian grandmaster Rafael Vaganian, the former challenger for the World Championship title and winners of many strong tournaments, including the Soviet Union Championship. So he played here knight c3, sacrifices the pawn on b2. So it still looks like a terrible blunder. Queen takes b2. And now, of course, white is not going to play queen d2 because the rook on a1 is hanging. Cannot play, of course, also king d2, and we are not going to move the knight as well. However, white has very unpleasant and strong move, bishop d2. So suddenly, bishop is protecting the knight on c3, and black's queen, despite the fact by winning this pawn on b2, just situation quite dangerous for the strongest black's piece, because black not only won the pawn but also lost many tempi in development, and now white is threatening not only e4, e5 capturing the center, but also rook b1 and the knight b5 winning the black's rook after the fork on c7. For instance, if black is playing just like e6, immediately white plays rook b1, queen a3 and knight b5, and position is totally lost for black. So knight c7 is coming. So in the first game which was played for this line between Rafael Vaganian and Viktor Kupreychik in Soviet Union Championship 1974, Kupreychik surprisingly just faced for the first time in his life this line and moved his queen back, queen b6. However, it gives white the opportunity to capture the full control over the center and to get the full compensation for the sacrificed pawn on b2. e4, d6, and now white has to play very aggressive because he is material down. f4, fighting for the initiative. This is the usual and the most typical way of playing the gambits. So white is going to push e4, e5 next move. g6, e4, e5, d takes e5, f takes e5, knight d7, knight f3. So black allows white to take the full control over the center, and these two pawns d5 and e5 really look strong. However, Viktor Kupreychik's main idea now is just not to fight for the center right now, but to completing the development of the bishop after bishop g7, and then to play short castling very fast, and only then maybe to attack white center later on after e6. At the same time, white has to look after the e5 pawn. Bishop g7, rook b1. Again, Vaganian is playing with a lot of energy, so he is bringing all his pieces in the game. Suddenly black cannot play queen c7, because this would met by typical pawns push d5 d6, when we know the rules, and when you have the pass pawn you have to push it. So the d6 put black in the very tough situation, because e takes d6 after knight b5 will be almost critical. So knight is coming to d6, and then bishop comes to c4. So black is just finding himself in almost losing situation immediately after the opening. For instance, queen d8, knight takes d6 check, king f8. So here's possible two options. Also bishop c4, and even white can consider the sacrifice on f7, knight takes f7, then knight g5. So it looks for the first sign that bishop g5 is just going to win immediately, because after queen c7 white has very strong and powerful move like queen d5. However, by playing bishop g5, black still can stay in the game after queen a5 check. That's why probably bishop c4 is the most natural and the strongest continuation after knight takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. White could continue here, also bishop h6 check, and also short castling. It's almost impossible for black to survive in such a situation when white is having such a great development advantage. So it means that after rook b1, black queen has to go to the back rank, to the d8 square. So once again we see in the Gambit lines that the strong pressure of our powerful pieces just does not allow your opponent to complete the development the normal way. So he has always to protect and to defend himself. e6, one more strongest continuation. Now after f takes e6, Vaganian played knight g5 with the new threats, knight takes e6. Knight f6 only answer, so black has to cover somehow the pawn on e6, and now new piece is coming into the fight, bishop b5. Again black is in big trouble. So the problem is that after bishop d7 and knight takes e6, black doesn't have a time to capture the knight on e6, and this knight is just brings into the black's position the total house, because knight takes g7 and knight takes d8, both threats, black just cannot stop it. So after bishop b5 check, king f8, only move now, d takes e6. Look, just 15 moves and black in such a terrible situation. White has a new threat now, knight f7. a6, the last try to counterattack. So black is ready already to sacrifice his unplayable rook on h8 after knight f7, but to trade or to somehow to destroy the white's potential. Indeed, another great move coming, bishop to e3. White is ready to sacrifice. So the problem for black that he cannot capture on b5 because queen takes d8, At the same time, the move queen takes d1, rook takes d1, a takes b5 just leads to the terrible situation after check. Knight e8, short castling check, and the game finished very soon. So white's next move could be also rook takes c8, and we have the same number of pieces on the game after rook takes c8, but the difference is just very serious. So white is also intending at many lines, like rook takes f6 move, or let's say after king g7, knight f7, bishop takes c3, white is just going to checkmate black's king. Bishop h6 check, king g8, and rook takes e8. Game is over. So bishop e3 put black in the biggest problem now, since his only answer now is queen a5 and short castling. Again, black cannot touch the knight on c3 because queen d8, and this is a checkmate. h6, so black is doing his best, trying to get rid at least the knight on g5, capturing on b5, just prohibited after rook takes b5, and queen takes c3. Now queen checkmate, and there is no better move. It's amazing position. Queen c7 could be met by rook takes c5 or bishop f4 or knight d5. Just so many good options for white. Black cannot do anything. Let's say knight d5, queen d6. I can play simply bishop takes c5 or whatever. Just no way to survive. All black pieces are pinned. Queen cannot capture on d5, knight cannot capture on d5. The game is over. So h6, queen d3. So Vaganian found immediately the new target, the pawn on g6 with a threat of checkmate on f7, king g8, queen takes g6. Now bishop takes e6, last try, but of course cannot help anymore black. Knight takes e6, rook h7, and Vaganian finished the game with a great shot. Rook takes f6. Now if g takes f6, white just simply brings his queen to the background, queen e8, and this is a checkmate. Black played knight d7, but simply bishop takes d7, and finally black decided it's time to call the day. White is having not only a material but also just huge domination, huge positional advantage. For instance, after capture on f6, white has just plenty of choices, but the most simple, knight takes g7, rook takes g7, bishop e6 check, king h8, check here, one more check, and just question of what way to choose here, bishop h6 or rook takes b7. So it's coming, the mate is coming very soon. Fantastic game. So just in the first game already on, which was played with this Gambit variation, with this Gambit line, and we call this is the Vaganian's Gambit and the Trompowsky Attack. White showed the great potential of his development advantage. He developed, of course, his attack through the center because white got very serious control over the center squares, since black spent a lot of time for moving his strongest piece. So this waste of the time and waste of the energy of black's queen definitely paid off. So, as I said, it just becomes very, very popular, and I could tell you that the catastrophe could happen in such a situation quite often, and I would like to show you a few examples of what could happen when black is playing just wrongly in the Trompowsky attack and Vaganian's Gambit. Knight c3. So right now we are following the game between Zambor and Kondrik from Slovakian Team Championship 1997. Queen takes b2, bishop d2, and here black decided to play knight a6, so trying to stop the forthcoming knight b5 and knight c7 after rook b1. However, now we can realize that black has more than a problem. Rook b1, queen a3, e4, so straight in to play e4, e5, d6 only answer, and now knight to b5, attacking the queen. Only now black realized that queen a4 cannot be played. Can you answer why? So the reason is very simple. The queen and a king just on the same diagonal, when white's bishop is ready to reach. So by simple piece sacrifice, knight takes d6, white absolutely going just destroy all black's position. So e takes d6, loses queen after bishop b5 check, and only move like king d8 loses instantly after knight takes f7, and black just cannot save its game anymore. So it's quite an unpleasant surprise for black. So black queen has to go to a2, and this is a bitter end. After rook a1, the queen is threatening, queen has to go to b2, and this is the only move, and bishop c3, finish. The queen is trapped, the game is over. So by the way, this kind of opening trap is very, very typical for the Trompowsky attack. So let's try just some other game played in 2006 between Michael Schultz and Martin Hebke in Berlin Open. Knight c3, queen takes b2, bishop d2 now, queen b6. So black is trying to follow the recipe from Kuprejcik. However, e4, straight in e4, e5. So black is trying very hard to stop white's aggression by playing e5, f4. So later on we will study it, and this is a very standard and very typical way of just demolishing black's control over the e5 square. d6, f takes e5, d takes e5. Now white is continues attempting play. Knight f3, bishop d6, bishop c4, short castling, knight to d7, and now starts the attack on the king side. Knight h4 sends to the semi-open file, and the greatest outpost for the knight on f5. So white is just very simply coming with all his pieces towards the black's king side, so where the black already castled his king. Black is having a lot of problem with the space, so his pieces are cramped. How to stop knight f5? So black is trying to counterattack, playing queen b4. However, knight f5. So white is just simply continuing his plan. Knight b6, intending at least to capture on c4 with a knight. Queen takes c4 would be met, of course, by knight takes d6. So now white is playing another interesting move. Knight b5, simultaneously attacking the bishop on d6 and the queen on b4. Queen takes c4 is only move. Knight d6, queen a4. It looks still playable, still looks like black in the game. Indeed, white made two moves and just black realized that there is no escape anymore. So can you find these two moves? You're right, absolutely. Rook takes f6. Exchange sacrifice, breaking through the position. G takes f6, only move. Now bishop comes to h6. So black's king is absolutely alone. Just cannot prevent white's queen from coming to f3 and then or to f6 or to g3 when black's rook is under threat. So let's say if black's rook is going to d8 after queen f3. So how to stop queen g3? The move like king h8 just cannot save the game. Queen takes f6 and next move queen g7, and this is a checkmate. So if we play king h8, same problem. Of course white can simply capture on f8, but also I don't see any way to stop the mate after queen f3, knight d7, queen g3, threatening queen g7, rook g8, another smoother mate with a knight. Knight takes f7. So fantastic game, just showing again the white's great potential in the Vaganian's Gambit, in Trompowsky Attack. And one more game played in 2002 between Eric Lawson and Robin Giggard in the English League. Let's look at that. Queen takes b2, bishop d2, queen b6, e4, d6, f4. So white pawns going very, very fast. g6, e5. So we can see that black is following the game which we just analyzed between the Vaganian and Kuprejcik. Knight d7, knight f3, bishop g7, rook b1. Same problem, black has to move the queen to d8 and white continue just the line which we already saw. e6, f takes e6, knight g5. Here black decided to exchange his dark square bishop and played bishop takes c3, intending that after bishop takes c3 to play knight f6. How would you finish the game in that case? That's a very interesting question. White to move. So Eric Lawson played bishop b5 check, and only now black realized that he just has to move the king, because bishop d7 or knight d7 white simply captures on e6 with a decisive advantage. On bishop d7 even could be considered d takes e6 also with a huge advantage. So black moved the king on f8. However, white pushed the pawn again after d6. Now black realizes that he is in big trouble. E takes d6 cannot be played because bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and rook f1, and black is going to lose a queen. So after d6, black tried to include his light square bishop into the game after e5. However, white made the final and decisive pawns move, d6, d7, which forced black immediately to resign, since after any of the recapturing with the bishop or with the knight leads after knight e6 to the decisive material losses. For instance, bishop takes d7, knight e6 check, and this fork is just critical for black, since bishop is pinned, cannot touch the knight on e6, the queen on d8 is hanging. So another great game, very interesting way how white, I would say, used all the ideas which already we knew from the Vaganian's game against Kuprejcik, and very successfully also finished his attack. So in the next lesson we will study more about the Trompowsky attack, and especially I will take a look more deeply on the different variations, different interesting games in the Vaganian's Gambit. Hope you joined. If you have any question, you can leave me a message on ICC. Follow Gambit Guide on Chess FM. See you next time. And a small announcement: my new book, the Alterman Gambit Guide, Volume 1, White Gambits, is now on sale. You can find a link to the book on the chess.fm page. Just look for the Gambit Guide section. See you next time. All the best.